live from Silicon Valley. Jason, it's been a while. I hope you are well as well. Welcome to Halftime.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope everybody's well.
We are. Thank you.
I'm losing my mind.
Look, I think to some extent everybody is in stay at home. Let's start with Tesla. As I introed, you did get the very first Model S. Are you an
serial number one? Yeah.
Are you a current investor in the company?
No, and just so everybody's clear, I'm a private market investor. The only time I'll hold public stocks is in my Wealthfront account, also an investor in that company, which is low fee, index funds. And then I will hold a lot of the private companies that then go public, but I usually sell them, along the way, like I did with Uber. I've sold twice along the way. Once I sold some shares to Uber, once to Masayoshi-san, and then I'm keeping the rest because I'm bullish on the company.
Sure. Well, as we know, you pretty well, just because you don't have an investment position doesn't mean you don't have an opinion.
I have lots of opinions.
Yes, I know you do. So I want your opinion on Tesla, both to, Musk lately in his battle with California, also his tweets of late about him saying his stock is overvalued. I'm just wondering how you view both events. You know how there is a huge cult of followers and investors in that name and who really believe in Elon Musk. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, he is a once-in-a-generation entrepreneur, and the products he makes are second to none. They're the category killers, category redefiners. And at the end of the day, what we do in investing in companies here in Silicon Valley and what you do in making bets on the public markets is about world-class products and services. And this is the world-class product in the automotive space, and it's better than anything the incumbents have. And when we look at, the issues around reopening, it's very confusing for the business, for people running businesses today, because, and I think for Americans generally, we're not allowed to go to the beach. We're not allowed to play golf, but we can take the subway. And this is the incredible failure of our government, from the federal level down to the local level, to not be able to give basic instructions and to have a clear voice. And somehow this has turned into a political issue, which is the worst of all outcomes, to have, you're a Republican right-wing person if you want to go back to work. And, on the left, if you let people go back to work, you're committing murder. It's ridiculous. And we have to take a much more measured, thoughtful approach to letting people go back to work who want to. I understand people are scared. People can opt out of this. But we've got a lot of people who work behind keyboards, some of them in the media, who really want to tell people they can't go back to work when they're, have a six-figure job clicking on keys on a keyboard. And it's not very realistic. And certainly, if people can ride the subway and if people can go to Trader Joe's and pack into all these different places, I think we could start to open factories. And it seems like they're singling him out for some reason, which is a really stupid mistake on the part of California. I mean, California is doing everything they can in terms of taxes, in terms of regulation, to get great companies out of here. And Silicon Valley right now is, the entire conversation is, why am I here? Why am I paying these prices? Why am I dealing with dysfunctional government on the local level, on the state level? And people are looking at Texas, Nevada, and Florida, and Tokyo. I mean, people want out of this town. It's a very real trend.
What is the future of Silicon Valley going to look like from an employee perspective? You've had some companies, obviously already, Twitter basically saying you can stay and work home forever, for that matter. Yeah. And you've had some layoffs at some well-known companies as well. Is the Valley going to be changed forever?
It's going to go through the boom-bust cycle that it did after the dot-com boom, is my prediction, but maybe a little more muted. We have a housing crisis here because the local government is so dysfunctional, they can't build units. So because of that incompetence and the incompetence of high tax, it's probably going to stay the same in terms of occupancy, because you do still have all the amazing venture capital there and so much talent. But I do think 100% of companies learning how to work remote, perfectly, what people have figured out is, this 10% of my workforce is crushing it. This 10% is phoning it in. I'm going to cut that 10%. I'm going to have a more efficient company, and I'm going to get rid of my second or third highest cost, which is facilities and real estate. I'm going to let everybody work from home. And then instead of trying to hire somebody in Silicon Valley, which is about a $40,000 a year premium, because a one-bedroom apartment here is $4,000 in private school, and you get the idea. We're going to be able to say, or what they're going to say is, hire anybody who's great wherever they are, because we know how to manage these people. And it used to be that the old folks, Gen Xers and boomers, just didn't know how to manage people unless they could see them. Now everybody in the last 8 weeks has gotten a crash course in this. They know how to manage people. And what's going to happen is then you can hire anybody around the globe to fill a position, which means you fill the position 5 times faster. The person stays 3 or 4 times longer. You don't have turnover, and you get them at a 30% lower price. So this collapse that I'm seeing where companies are laying off tons of people, the upside to this is the way out of the recovery is going to be remote work. It's going to be people having more efficient companies, wildly efficient companies, in fact. Like Twitter spends a lot of money on those buildings and pays a lot of tax to San Francisco, and they're out. And San Francisco is going to get demolished. The tax basis is going to get crushed, and the commercial real estate is going to collapse.
It's interesting.
And I'm seeing this every day in my portfolio of 250 companies I've invested in the last decade.
It's interesting in what you say about sort of talent, it can be found anywhere. I mean, that's what Chuck Robbins on this network said to Jim Cramer the other day. I thought it was so interesting the way that he framed it, too, talking about, they didn't realize that they could literally find talent anywhere around the world and hire people in ways that they never even thought they could prior to COVID-19. The future of work literally is changing, if not overnight, in a matter of months.
It's completely revolutionized, the game. And there were people who were telling us this. There were small companies like WordPress or InVision who had gone 100% remote, and they kept telling everybody, this is the greatest thing ever. But, people, paradigms, don't change. People have to, from the last paradigm, have to either get dragged kicking and screaming in a crisis, or they have to die. That's the way the paradigm shift changes. Well, here we have a crisis that's forcing that paradigm shift. And a lot of the top talent now realizes this, and they're saying, why would I be in a high tax state? Why would I pay that amount to not own a home and own a tiny little apartment? I'm going to Austin. I'm going to Miami. I'm going to Kyoto. And Japan and Texas and Miami are becoming the top destinations. Nashville. We're going to see the entire world get flipped on its head after this. And for Silicon Valley, it means there'll be 10%, 20% cheaper apartments.
This also factors into, Jason, and I know I don't have all that much time, so forgive me, but Uber, for example, you're an early investor in Uber. You were.
Number 3.
This conversation plays right into Uber as well when you think about what it means to people to be an employee of something, to have benefits, access to health care provided by your employer. How is all of that going to change on the other side for a company like Uber?
Well, we were sitting here a year ago, and there were a bunch of people saying, Uber's got to drop Uber Eats, and they should just have one pure play. And I mean, what a stupid position that was. The fact that Uber has 2 really vibrant businesses and is investing in the future is what these companies are supposed to do. And the Grubhub merger or acquisition, however it would wind up being framed, I think is great for the industry. We have to make these companies profitable. And as Wall Street taught us, there is no appetite for money-losing Silicon Valley companies anymore. We have to present the public market with companies that are on the cusp or already profitable if you're going to want to buy the shares. And so we're operating in an ecosystem where you have 2 private companies, Postmates and DoorDash, which are more than willing to play the growth at all costs game. And then you have Grubhub and, Uber Eats and Domino's, which are forced to show profitability and put up numbers and be a real business. So consolidating a little of this would be good. And again, you have Elizabeth Warren and, AOC saying we have to block these mergers. These companies will go away. These services will not be available unless they can get to profitability. The game is over. There is no more Saudi money to underwrite these companies.
I don't want to have a political debate.
It is, it is political, though.
Well, but I want to talk about
it has to pass through. It has to get approved.
That's fine. Should Uber consider its workers employees?
Oh, it's a very simple answer here. Our system is broken. We have 2 definitions. You're either full-time or you're 1099. And it is a political issue. We should allow people to pick to be 1099 if they want to. Most people who are driving for the ride-sharing services like to set their own hours, and they don't want to wear an Uber or Target or Lyft T-shirt. If you make them full-time, then they can't switch services, right? Then you can have exclusivity. So that will benefit Uber because they would be able to take all of that talent off the market, and they would force them to work only for Uber. So then the employees lose that 1099 status. We need a third status that needs to be built by the Republicans and the Democrats in a definition. if you pass 1,000 hours, let's pick, halfway to 2,000 hours, you get X amount of benefits put into a fund for you by the company, X amount of days off, X amount of dollars for you to use on healthcare. And then if you tip over to 2,000 and you want to be full-time, well, yeah, then we can define, a uniform, a code of conduct, and what your car needs to be, or we can provide you with the car. When people are 1099, you can't tell them anything other than here's the ride. You're not allowed to dictate how they provide the service, right? And that was always the magic and the Achilles heels of these services. People say, oh, Uber's not consistent enough. They're not consistent because they're not employees. You can't dictate to them. They need to be, working on a Sunday afternoon. They get to pick their hours. So it's really just poor execution on a political basis again, interfering with the free market. And that is really something that's going to be a big issue that we're going to discuss over the next 5 to 10 years as the socialist, anti-capitalism movement infects every single discussion. And we have to embrace this political discussion.
Uber, though, on its own has a role to play, too. I mean,
Sure.
Being a good corporate citizen is going to be perhaps more valued than ever on the other side of
100.
COVID-19. You take all the politics crap out of it, right?
Yeah. Well, who's running the company now, right? I mean, they put in somebody who is specifically designed to make peace and to be able to have those kind of discussions and create that kind of company. Uber is not the cutthroat company that I invested in for the first decade that got it where it is and changed the world. Now it is operating as many people would argue, a little less like pirates and a little more polished.
Yeah, but you're suggesting that's a bad thing.
Well, it's a bad thing for growth. You can't build these world-changing companies if you're not a pirate and you're not a rebel, because you'll get absolutely demolished by the incumbents. And so the new model and the way this will probably work is we'll probably have like this pirate mentality here in Silicon Valley. We're going to have this aggressive rebellion. We're going to change the world. We're going to change. We're going to compete with incumbents. We're going to change the way business is done. We're going to make it cheaper for the consumer. And then when these companies get public and they get at scale, well, then AOC and Elizabeth Warren are going to come down heavy on them. And if we have that kind of government, we're never going to have mergers again. And, it'll be slow growth for decade two for these companies. And maybe that's better. We have to decide as a society if we want to give the leading companies to China, which has no problem taking out all regulation and picking the winner, or do we want to have a vibrant free market here? And it's just really soul crushing to watch everybody think that these companies need to be overregulated, when in fact the free market is just incredibly vibrant and doing an amazing job. We had record low unemployment for a reason. It was because all of these gig working jobs created a floor, and that floor used to be called unemployment. It used to, be off the books labor, and then it got lifted. The people who are working for the ride sharing companies have an option of going to Starbucks, or had the option of going to Starbucks or Target, Walmart, and the Apple stores, which were desperate to get people out of those ride-sharing cars, and they couldn't because people wanted the flexibility, and they wanted to take that job, not be stuck, 8 hours making macchiatos for people. They chose to take those ride-sharing jobs, and that's why we got to record low unemployment in my mind. And now we want to just rip all this out. Be careful what you wish for. There could be very bad consequences when you start putting your thumb on the scale.
To be continued for certain. Jason, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.